I'm ready.
All right, it is 7 o'clock. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you everybody. Dave, do you have any questions on attendance?
Nope.
All right, then we're moving on to the agenda approval. Is there any additions or corrections?
I had a few corrections. I added an employment number 10. I added one under employment, and then I added a resignation this morning that we got over the weekend. Also under reports, I added for board committees the MSBA training. And then I had a spelling error in meet and confer number 7, so I fixed that spelling error.
All right, does anybody have any questions regarding the changes and corrections? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is open forum. Rules for open forum, 3 minutes per speaker. Open forum shall not take more than a total of 15 minutes. No complaints about individual staff members. All presenters will conduct their business in a manner that meets community standards for decorum. The board will not take action on items presented in an open forum. Did anybody sign up?
No. No.
Does anybody wish to speak during open forum? Moving on, the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions or need anything pulled from the consent agenda and placed later in the agenda? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and there's a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is the bills. If you have any questions on the bills, please state the page number and the bill number. Is there any questions on the bills? If not, I'm looking for a motion to pay the bills.
I'll make that.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. Please note meetings that are upcoming, including committee meetings. I did have a change on here for support staff negotiations. I just had not typed the new date, so those of you on the support staff negotiation committee, we are meeting next week on the 20th. We're beginning to plan for summer school. Like last summer, we were going to run our summer school programming in June rather than at the end of July or August like we had done years prior to that. Recommend keeping pay the same as years past at the teacher's hourly rate. And staff, Bonnie, Mrs. Scullard, and Ms. Hinckley will begin recruiting staff in March, and the school board will approve ESY plans in March at that time. Scholarship season, it's hard to think that that's coming, but it's middle of February, and the students are very much active in getting their scholarship applications done. They have about 13 more days or so to get those done, and then the scholarship committee usually meets mid to end March or very early April in years past. Jody Storley is the board rep on that, and Katie Hartle and Kim Hinckley will serve as the staff rep since I have a senior this year. So Kim and Katie will be the staff reps again this year. And then another upcoming date, which I'll remind you as we get a little closer, is the senior banquet, which is Wednesday, May 8th. That's here in Finlayson. And this year it's a 6 p.m. start. But as we get a little closer, that's something all board members are invited to. It's probably my favorite night, one of my favorite nights of the school year, probably my favorite night of the school year, watching these seniors get recognized for their hard work and and seeing the generosity of our two communities give to these students financially for their college years. Heather Hansen has agreed to pass out diplomas. Typically when we have a board member who is a senior, that's the first person that the superintendent would invite to do that. Heather has agreed to do so. As we kind of develop that graduation plan, Ms. Hinckley will share that with you as we get a little closer to May, but it is time to start thinking about all those cool things upcoming for seniors and then how that impacts school board members' involvements. Last and probably the biggest update, I would like to start in March doing something a little bit different with our high school lunches. Currently in our high school, we serve 2 hot lunch options, and students have an a la carte option. Our elementary schools, we just have 1 lunch. I'd like to change our high school for the rest of this year just to have 1 hot lunch option, as we'll talk about a little further in agenda, and we've talked about on and off throughout the school year. Since we developed this school year's budget, we're trying to really work on our food service budget and bring our revenue and expenses a little closer together. Talking with Sarah, she felt that by making 2 menu options, even when she compares it to when she makes the same 2 the previous month. So for example, a popular combination is hamburgers in one line, hot dogs in the other. She knows roughly how many ate it the last time. She said the next time it might flip perfectly and they will have waste in one line or the other. Yes, we can freeze some of that and reuse some of that, but it might help keep some costs down in the high school. So I'd like to try that for the rest of the school year, see how that goes, see how that impacts our revenue. Working with Sarah, we feel we are appropriately staffed. There are some other things we're also looking at all 3 buildings to make sure revenue and expenses match a little bit better, but I'd like to try this starting in March. And I wanted to bring that up now as there's not a lot of time between now and March to make sure we can update the students, update the staff, update the community, and Sarah can set her menus. Any questions or feedback on that before I would go forward on that?
Great idea.
Not hearing much on that. That's what I will plan to do. And that's what I had for my superintendent report this month.
All right, thank you, Brian. Next up is the high school principal report, Ms. Hinckley.
Good evening. The first item on my agenda, looking for board approval. We just have a couple of additions to subject matters. The first thing is that when we were doing subject matters, Amanda Murphy was on maternity leave, and so it was just an oversight. She would like to offer and is now eligible to teach college biology, so we'd like to give that as an option for next year. So it's basically the same as regular biology, but just at the college level. And then 2 other options for social studies electives. Ben Vikstrom has put together a couple proposals and has quite a few students interested in a few different social studies electives. So those are listed there: world history through film, and then board game development. So looking for board approval to add those to the subject matters if we have enough students to take the classes. Obviously that will factor whether or not we're able to offer them. But if we do have the student participation, if the board would approve letting us offer those next year. Any questions about that?
How many students are needed for each one?
We're trying to.
I've asked Ms. Hinckley to start with 15 for now, just as we're kind of ironing out our budget and revenue and expenses for next year. 10 or 11 we've done some years, but I've asked her to start at 15 and might end up above that 10 to 11, 12 number. The hard part with electives is they always kind of change once the master schedule gets set. Students may have chosen one class, but it competes with another class. So our elective classes kind of always bounce in numbers. So that's why we have a little bit of flexibility. But to start with, for now, I've asked her to look at 15, knowing that there may be some flexibility with that.
Does anybody have any other questions? If
I
not,
do have a question.
yep.
Go ahead.
Can I ask what college classes are we offering besides college biology, where a student would get college credits?
Yes.
Toby, are you able to hear Ms. Hinckley when she's talking?
Yes, I did hear her when she spoke previously.
Okay.
So we have college world history, college chemistry, We have college art, college painting. And I believe that's it.
Did you hit?
Do we offer any kind of option for students to earn credits towards their English requirements?
Oh,
Yep,
yep, sorry, college comm also.
college composition we
Yeah.
have and creative writing.
Yes, thank you, sorry. Yes,
Okay,
And did you hit calculus, statistics, and pre-calc?
oh, that was in the far column. Yes, did you hear that?
We have, Toby, I don't know if you heard me, we also have calculus, statistics, and pre-calculus.
okay, that sounds good, thank you.
We really try and offer a lot of different options so students can take classes here versus just doing PSEO.
Yeah, and I think that's great that kids have the option to knock out some math general requirements as well as some English general requirements for their major. That's good.
Alright, if there's no other questions, then I'm looking for a motion to approve college biology, world history through film, and board game development for Miss Henke.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Number 2 on my list, I just attached the list of number of students that have registered for the classes as of right now. Again, like Mr. Masterson says, those things can change. It also can change due once we get the schedule out, when classes are offered, what students can take, what classes. So this is kind of just our first stab at where we're at with as far as registration goes. So I just wanted to share that with the board. Any questions on that piece? All right, I'm gonna jump ahead first to number 4, and then I'll come back to number 3 because I just kind of want to talk about our high school goals and then circle back to where we're at with our junior high MTSS leadership team planning. So just wanted to update you on where we're at midway through the school year around our high school goals. Number 1 was to decrease the number of attendance referrals. And as of year to date, we're at 587. So again, Mandy and the team are working really hard to address attendance and make sure kids are in class. Number 2, semester fails. So this is the number of students who had at least 1 or more semester fails. So this is definitely one of the areas that we really focused on last week during PLCs and will continue to focus on, looking at decreasing those semester fails. So the goal was 20 and we had quite a few at each grade level, so we're going to continue to look at that. The next thing is increasing MCA test proficiency in both math and reading. And so these next graphs are kind of where we're at with our fast growth scores. So if you look at the first table for reading, the first column is no growth score, meaning those students either didn't take it in the fall or didn't take it in the winter, so we can't calculate a growth score for those students. The next one down is students that didn't have any growth or negative growth. Then we have some growth, typical growth, which is what FAST would want to see from fall to winter, and then aggressive growth would be above average growth. The bottom number underneath is the combined number of students that had typical or average growth. So that would be, we want obviously 100% of our students to be at typical or aggressive growth. So we're looking at 7th graders, we're at 36%, 8th graders 52%, 9th grade 67%, and 71% of our 10th graders are making average or above average growth. Just another note, it's not on here, but the percentage of students that are at that reading proficiency based on FAST scores. So 7th graders were at 37%, 8th grade 55%, 9th grade 50%, and 10th grade 47%. So that's kind of what would be predicted to pass the MCAs, that percentage. Does that make sense? So we have kids that are making growth and then kids that are at that grade level target. For math, again, the same thing. We had kids who didn't have a score because they didn't take it. We had no growth, some growth, typical growth, and then aggressive. And then that bottom number again is combined typical or aggressive growth. So 7th graders at 53, 8th graders 39, 9th graders 69, and 10th grade 71. And then the kids that are at proficient in 7th grade were at 41, 8th grade 53, 9th grade 47, and 10th grade 46%. So again, kind of looking at this, a lot of our 9th and 10th graders are making that growth that we want, still struggling with our 7th and 8th graders, which is kind of what I'll talk about with our junior high plan going forward. And then the last goal is decreasing the number of referrals. We want to have us fit in that triangle where we have 80% of our students with 1 or less referrals, 15% with 2 to 5, and 5% with 6 or more. And we're pretty close to that. Again, we're still working on that in our PLCs as well, working on behaviors so that we're fitting into that, those percentages. So those are kind of updates on our goals. And so kind of looking at that last week during PLCs, we shared this data with staff, and then we took time during PLCs to meet with departments and look at and share successes and share what things we can do this year and then what things we want to look at moving forward. And we're going to continue to work on that this week in PLCs as well. So we kind of just started with collecting some information and we'll be moving forward with that. But one thing that the junior high MTSS team is really looking at doing something different to support our 7th graders, looking at the data, a lot of our behavior referrals, a lot of our kids that are failing, a lot of our kids that are not making growth are our 7th and 8th graders. And so what can we do to really support our middle school students as they transition from elementary to high school, because it is such a big change. Very different, a lot of freedoms, a lot of stuff that they really struggle. So how can we create more of a gradual release into the high school and not just this throw you in and you're with 18-year-olds. And so some things the junior high leadership or the junior high MTSS team have been working on is creating their big thing is creating this middle school within the high school. And one way we're doing that is thinking about how we can maybe rearrange staff within the building to kind of contain our junior high on either the 3rd or 4th floor so that all their classes are together, their lockers are there, so they're not roaming around the building, they're transitioning, in a very small space. We can have support staff kind of up there, making sure that students are not running kind of around the whole building, that they kind of have that gradual release into the whole building. So that's kind of one thing we're looking at. Also looking at creating a junior high handbook that really focuses on restorative practices, integration into instruction, SEL stuff, common expectations. We're also looking at creating a win time almost at the high school for 7th and 8th graders where it's kind of that either focusing on reading intervention, math intervention, SEL, behavior interventions kind of at the end of the day where we can also use that time for kids that are meeting goals. They can have celebrations. We can do some, Jeff Tyson is looking at doing some, doing some outdoor learning type things to really kind of increase engagement, to create increased movement. Some things like that. We're also looking at increased training and implementation of SEL support, incorporating grade level more junior high instructional strategies and instructional practices into the classrooms, and really just trying to focus on those junior high students and do something different to maybe help that transition and to help them be more successful in 7th and 8th grade so that they're ready for when they get to high school. So those are some of the things that we're kind of focusing on. I'm kind of just jumping through everything. What kind of questions do you have? Again, I'll have more of as we continue to finalize the plan and the team works every month on these things, I'll be updating the board along the way, but that's kind of what we're looking at next year, trying to create a middle school inside of a high school and providing more support for our 7th and 8th graders going forward. Any feedback, thoughts, questions, concerns?
Have you reached out, because most of the schools around us have the same, I'm sure, issues, and they have the same building situations. So do you do any collaborating with any others to see what they're doing within the high school for junior high?
Yeah, Jana has been, as she kind of leads this team, has been reaching out to the other schools and looking at their handbooks, talking to the teams to kind of see what else they've been doing, and we've been using that as they've been doing their planning. So the junior high MTSS team, each teacher took a handbook from a different school. That was kind of their homework assignment over the last between meetings, is to kind of look at in the handbook, what do you see different, what could we change? So that is something that we are doing, yes.
Okay. Not that we have to do the same, but
yeah. I know I've spoken with the middle school principal at North Branch, and she's had a ton of success and has seen a real decrease in behavior. So her and I have been collaborating. She's been sharing some of the restorative justice stuff that they're doing, some things that they're doing at the middle school there that we can maybe look at incorporating to next year. So again, it's a work in progress. It's a big thing that we're tackling, but I think everybody's ready to try something different because what we've been doing just isn't working, and we really want to make sure that we're providing that support because those are such important years that we want to make sure they have those foundations when they get to high school and credits and things matter. So stay tuned, more information to come. And last, I guess, is most important part is Matt and Hannah and Brecken giving our student update.
Girls basketball were 12-9 for the season, and we have 3 games this week. 2 of them are home games against Hill City, and East Central, and then we go to Moose Lake on Friday. We're hoping to win them all.
Excuse me. I'm talking about boys basketball. They're currently 8-15 on the season. They had 3 games last week. I believe they won 1 and lost 2 of them. The one that they won, I was able to make it out to, and it was a good game. They won and defeated Proctor, so that was good for them. Good win. And they play against our rival school, East Central, on Friday up at EC, so that'll be fun. I'm sad I can't go watch, but 3 of a game, but it's fun to see them play.
I'm going to talk about the arts a little bit. So our one-act play happened on January 25th, I think, at Mora High School, and we competed against 5 other schools, and we tied for second, but for a technicality, we ended up getting third. Had we have gotten second, we would have moved on, but one of the critiques our judges said was that we were too realistic, so I guess our play was just too good. So yeah, we didn't get to move on there. And for speech, junior high's season has ended. They had their conference meet a couple weeks ago, and they got first place, which was surprising because there's a lot of, Frau hasn't gotten first place in a long time, so a lot more kids this year, so good for that. And senior high has started, and yeah, we're going pretty well. And so for school, we have mid-quarter next Wednesday, I believe, and I think us seniors are ready to get to the finish line here. Scholarships are going pretty well. I don't know, I'm kind of stressed out a little bit, but it'll be fine. And lastly, we have a blood drive this coming Wednesday, and if any of you would like to give blood, please let me know, because I'm the blood drive coordinator, and yeah, that would be super nice. So yeah, that's all I got.
One more quick update. Katie just shared with me earlier, so it's not in my board report, but we have 30 students signed up for the ACT. That's the most we've had in a long time, so that's great news. And then also honors breakfast will be the 20th and 22nd, and those invites are getting mailed out as we speak. So looking forward to that as well to celebrate A&B Honor Roll.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Ms. Henke or the students?
I have a comment to Hannah. I watched you lead some cheers last Thursday night.
Yeah.
Very impressive. Your enthusiasm is wonderful.
I like to get the student section fired up.
You did a good job.
Good job.
A career
Thank
in
you,
college
Matt.
cheer, is that what I hear?
Yes.
Anna, Brecken, thank you, Ms. Henke. All right, we'll move on to elementary principal report. Ms. Sculler.
All right, thank you. Something I said? Wow, gotta work on that a little bit. Jeez. It is February, and I love to read month at both schools. We have a vast array of things going on, activities, dress-up days, a lot of mentorship between grade levels happening, a lot of activities Mrs. Lee have planned and then planted in our hallways. Read a book as you walk through the hall. I think we have just about every staff member pictured with a prop, and the kids get to guess what book it is. It's fantastic, and the kids are loving it. So it's amazing. We had book bingo held this year on February 1st. I think this was the 13th year that Jill Hopkins has initiated that. A big sponsor are the Hinckley-Lions. They donate all the books and the funds for that. We had 80 plus kids. I think it was 84 kids that came out this year. Book bingo will be held at Finlayson on the 29th of February here as well. So looking forward to that. February also brings our 100th day of school. and it happens to fall on this Wednesday, so Valentine's Day, and the kids will just love being at school. My second item is an action item, so looking for approval for Hinckley-Finlayson to attend a conference down in Orlando, Florida. She submitted a grant through Education Minnesota. I think this is a newly found opportunity for our staff, our teachers. Haley submitted it and she was awarded it, and it's just an amazing opportunity. She'll be, if approved, will be attending a conference put on by the Learning Disabilities Association of America. It's actually an international conference that is linked in there if you'd like to get more information, but just an opportunity that our teachers don't necessarily get, just because the funds are a pretty big demand. This grant pays for everything outside of the sub costs for our district, and that's already built into the PD budget. So looking for approval for that opportunity for Haley.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I did look at the schedule and some of the sessions and the trainings that were available. Not that I'd ever want to dictate what somebody does and doesn't attend, but have you reviewed some of those with her on what are some needs in the elementary that she could maybe bring the material back to?
I have not, I will be honest, I have not. That's something that we looked at it as a PD committee.
Okay.
I think I'd be more than willing to do that, but she'd be the one to kind of identify what she thinks would be more of a strength in bringing it back. I could definitely sit down with her. I don't know if she's already decided that or not.
Yeah, I mean,
If
I
she
wouldn't
already
want
had
to, I
that.
was just thinking, what are some of the needs and if there's other staff feedback or, your feedback that would.
Yeah. I haven't, that's a great idea. This is our first one we've ever
I don't know if
gone
I've
through this.
ever had someone go to an international since I've been here conference. It's a pretty
Yeah.
unique opportunity.
I mean, it looked like some really great sessions and really great training.
Yep.
Really.
That's actually really good feedback that I could take back and sit down with staff. What we've done once the PD committee got this, we were like, oh, maybe we should have a little bit different process. So when they do submit a grant or an opportunity to Minnesota Education, that we're sitting down with them so we have a little bit better idea instead of, like I said, this is our first time, so she was shocked she got it. It was, yeah, it was a great surprise, so.
So that was the only thing that I thought, that just where some of the needs are, that it might be helpful to target a few of those. Not all of her schedule, but a few of those.
You can visit with Haley just to see, bring that back next month if you approve for her to attend and see how it can benefit our program and kids at Hinckley Elementary.
All right, so Ms. Fuller's looking for a motion to approve Hinckley-Finlayson going to the international conference in Orlando.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Bonnie.
I will take that information back to Haley, and actually I know she's watching because she always does, but she'll thank you for the support. So, thank you. We are doing Jump Rope for Heart this year at Hinckley Elementary. We had taken a number of years off from partnering with the American Heart Association, and we thought it was time to get back engaged in giving back to those outside of our community. So we will kind of see how it goes. Kids were really excited when we presented this at the all-school celebration, just kind of see what this can do, how they can tie it into maybe somebody they know, some family members who may be affected by a heart disease. We'll visit it at the end of the sessions and see how it goes and see if it's something we're gonna explore for the future. But it is something that our kids are pretty excited about doing right now. Our next graph there is our student achievement both at both buildings. The first one is a fast reading. You'll see the kids across the top. There was 5 kids in our whole Hinckley Elementary that did not make any growth through that first from fall to winter. 2 in 2nd grade, 0 in 3rd grade. Everybody made growth. That's amazing. 1, 2, and 1. So, again, we have a fair amount of kids in that middle area, which is below typical growth, but if you look at typical to aggressive growth, which is where we want our kids to be, 61, 51, 40, 34, 43, and 54% making typical or aggressive growth. I would say that's pretty phenomenal for year 2 of a new curriculum. They say we don't see those kind of results until year 3, at least, of a new curriculum. We're not where we need to be as reading proficiency, as you can see that across the board, but we're making the gains. So we're still, I think, making up from time lost during the pandemic, especially those 3rd, 4th graders who missed those foundational years in that K1 time. So you can see our growth scores there. Pretty pleased with our growth scores. Math proficiency, again, same thing, made great growth across the grade levels. This year, everybody is doing number corner through bridges, and I think that's has a huge impact on our numbers. Only 4 or 5 of our teachers are doing the bridges curriculum, but everybody's doing number corner, and I think that's where a lot of that number sense talk starts. And you can see the growth across grade levels there, 58, 62, 56, 67, 45, and 53. You can see them meeting at grade level. Finlayson, very similar, making very good growth. Not tested in first in the fall, 0, 1, 0, 1, and 0. So again, great growth, 50, 82, 71, 67, and 40%, making typical or aggressive growth. Reading proficiency at grade level. Again, same thing with math. If we look at 2nd grade, 100% of our kids had typical or aggressive growth. That's only 4 kids, but everyone had that typical or aggressive growth, so that's amazing to see. Any questions on what you see there?
So I did, so,
Yeah.
You mentioned that 3rd, 4th grade, because that was really when COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
So is this more specific that you're seeing with COVID, or are you seeing that something that has historically been an issue as all the learning gets harder, and then you start seeing more of some of those learning gaps, some of the things, if somebody's got dyslexia, or if they're having other issues. Are you seeing it in that age bracket?
We see most of it in that age range, especially that 3rd. Yeah, 2nd to 3rd is probably our biggest.
Yeah.
Historically, I would say more significantly this year that 3rd and 4th got hit.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say historically it is that 3rd to 4th jump is difficult, where we see a lot of that. What we are seeing with the wind time, the way we have it set up now, we have a lot of hands on deck. We've actually worked one of our reading corps people out of a job because they work with those yellow almost 2 grade level, and we just don't have as many of them. So that's good to see. Although when they have those significant deficiencies, we're really trying to narrow in on that, and I mean, it just takes so much time once they get past that 1st grade level. And that's what we hear across the board. It takes well over 2 hours of intervention time in a day to close those gaps, and we just don't have that. So trying to work with families of what they can do at home. Amplify does have good take-home activities, so families can get involved in their ELA part at least, and hoping that makes a gain. But okay. Great question.
Bonnie, do we do any incentives for when we do our testing for the children? Do the children know how, I guess I could have asked both of you this, do they know how important, and not that it's all about the test scores all day, every day, but do they know when they're taking the test how important it is?
We try. I would say, do they truly understand? No.
The olders maybe.
We do more so with the MCAs versus the Fast Bridge, the benchmarking testing.
Okay.
And that's only 3rd through 6th, obviously at the elementary. And we did incentivize that last year. I will take some blame for 3rd grade last year because even though the teachers talked about it, I should have been in there saying, this is a really important test, you know, so that is something that I'll do. I did that with reading last year. I didn't do it with math because we took math first or vice versa. I don't remember, but it showed me like, yep, we need to hit that a little bit harder. We did incentivize it as a whole school, but it's hard for them to get that buy-in. Like what? It's another test. It takes all day. I don't care, you know.
I remember.
You remarked the
I will be fixed.
At the high school, we did kids did set a goal with their math and reading teacher, and then I just went around on Friday actually and gave out 2 a la carte bucks to every kid that hit their goal. So made growth, so that we did, and then talked about MCAs, it's gonna be even bigger prize. So that's what we use, the picture fund money that we got from McDonald's and other types of fundraisers to help pay for that. So the high school, we did do that.
I would say our teachers do sit down and say, here's where you were at in the fall, here's our benchmark score, we hope for a goal score, you know, and set a goal. Especially those kids who are coming in pretty low, we want them, help them set a goal that is obtainable for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, we don't want, here's where grade level should be, but this is where you're at. We want you to get here, and then we do a reflection time on that too, like, how do you feel? Did you do your best? Did you try your hardest? What strategies could you have used to get better? Could you have reread the questions? Did you understand what you were reading? You know, those type of things.
Yeah.
But our teachers are having conversations like that with our kids. We could find what incentivizes them. It would be amazing, but.
Root beer floats.
What's that?
Root beer floats.
Root beer floats. We do a lot of root beer float parties and pizza parties.
Yeah.
But again, extremely hard, proud of the hard work that our teachers are putting in and the growth that both schools are making, so. Any other questions on
Any other
testing?
questions for Ms. Scullard?
The only thing I have left, gosh.
Oh, sorry.
Wolf Ridge is right around the corner. We leave March 4th. I think this is the year we've had the best attendance, at least in a while. We only have 4 or 5 kids that are looking at possibly staying back. Most of that is due to a parent or child decision, or safety concerns, those type of things. And it's getting expensive. It's up to $287 a kid right now, so. But they're ready to go. They're ready, and it's probably one of the best things that, best experiences they're gonna get in elementary, and they're gonna remember it all the way through high school, so.
All right, thank you, Ms. Scullard.
You're welcome, thank you.
Next up, board committees. Does anybody wish to speak regarding board committees? Well, I will speak regarding teaching and learning. We met and we kind of went over quite a bit of stuff. The letters update we have is off and running. It is also certified for training with dyslexia, so that was good to hear. We are looking at a new social studies standards, potentially online subscription to pilot for next year because there's a big new social studies standard where we are switching civics and world history. 9th grade and 11th grade. So 11th graders will get civics and 9th graders will get world history. Amplify, it seems to be going great at the elementary school, I believe is kind of what I heard and remember. Does anybody else want to chime in? No?
Jody, can I step back? I was super excited to announce that we have Heather and Janelle coming in tomorrow to observe some of our elementary classrooms. I'm super excited about that.
Fantastic.
I will tell you, I put it out to my entire staff of like, hey, we have some opportunities for, I was shocked how many people were like, I'm on. Pretty soon I sent a schedule to Heather and it was like all day, so. Super excited to have you guys in, so thank you for coming in to support the teachers.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yes.
You will have
Wait till tomorrow,
fun.
so you can say.
And also we went to MSBA, the Thursday after the last, board meeting. Either Heather or Janelle, would you guys like to
Yeah, I thought it was
debrief?
I can't even honestly remember now what the session was that I sat in on. So
We'll put it on there for next month.
Yeah.
Come back to it.
Well, the keynote there was about computer science and
yes.
how much that is growing. So do we have anything computer science related? Because they did give some resources with implementing computer science, and they did talk about AI, which is kind of good and bad. Okay, we don't want AI doing everybody's homework, but it just there was a discussion about that.
Kind of how it's like coming no matter if you want to stop it or not.
I
It's just
did
one of those
send
things.
the, company to Katie Hartle. That the guy that came and, well, he was actually virtual, you can imagine, and then there was a gal in person. And I sent that on to Katie. Because computer science, it's like in the low digits in the state of Minnesota for classes that are offered in the high school.
We have 7 students registered for it for next year. That's all.
And regarding AI last summer, or this past summer, MSBA always, every summer puts out kind of updated policies after the legislative session. They had told superintendents that this upcoming summer, they plan to have some draft policy regarding AI, because it's, again, we don't want it doing all their homework, but we want to use it as a good learning tool too. So hopefully they do that, because I know it's come up from moment to moment in the high school especially, is how are we going to work this into our policies and procedures. So hopefully that happens this summer.
Well, and it's something to think about too, even for that career exploration. Just because, I heard about it years ago, where you're gonna have your shopping carts go back to to the store versus having somebody bringing them back. Yeah, there's a lot of changes coming.
I wonder with that being said, we could even, I was just talking to Kim, she has 7 kids signed up, could we start a feeder program in the elementary as part of the specials? Like the 5th and 6th grade, how could we get that interest generated and?
Yeah, and one of the things that I found interesting were apps that some students had created. And one of them that was very interesting to me was he created an app that was like a game, but it wasn't actually a game. It was one in the event that somebody's in danger. You play this game, essentially, is what it looks like, but it's communicating that they're in danger. And then, so that there can be the assistance. And then mental health, there was mental health apps that a student had created, so it was very interesting. And a lot of it was with the AI, which, was good. That was a good one. A good part. But then they also had on there, I think it was a TikTok person, an AI TikTok, or was it YouTube person that had thousands of followers. So it was AI. You wouldn't have known that person was AI.
Wow.
I know.
Kind of scary.
Crazy.
Yeah, that was the scary part.
Yeah. One of the sessions that I know that Janelle and I sat in on was what school counselors wish that board members would know. And that one I thought was really good because it was actual counselors from a school. And it was just like having that validation that their job is important and that they do so much other things than we notice that they do. And just the support that they give the kids, so making sure that we also support them. So I think that was probably my favorite one of the day.
All right, we will move on to budget topics and unfinished business.
As we're working towards next year's budget, teachers are preparing their requests for what they need in their classrooms, which is due by the end of this month. The principals, managers, and I are looking at staffing, looking at numbers, enrollment numbers to determine the amount of staffing, looking at special ed implications to determine how many teachers and paraprofessionals we may need, So, each month you'll kind of get an update on that as we head from now towards June when we approve next year's budget. But that's kind of where the process is now, where we'll begin, once we get through the amended budget tonight, we'll begin to look at where we are, where we're projected to be for next year, and then matching our revenues to expenses. Was happy to see that as of the end of January, which is about 58% of the school year, that we had spent about 52.5% of our budget. So compared to last year, we were at about 56% of the spent budget this time. Last year, we did have some roofing costs that had bumped that up, but happy to see that we are living within our means as we are halfway through the school year at that point. You can see updated enrollment numbers as of February 1st, which was pretty consistent to last month, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But as we build a budget, we base it off the average daily membership. That's how MDE compares to our numbers. So even though we have 940 enrolled students, our average daily attendance is about 909, 910 students. So that's kind of how the state funds school districts, is by average daily membership. But you can see that. And the last one I wanted to hit in this category is just the first draft of the capital budget. Capital budget is our building and facilities needs, our technology purchases, and then transportation costs. So Jessica, Bruce, Keith, and I kind of each go through each area's individual kind of needs and wants. Tier 1 are things that we're currently still either doing investigation or really hoping to get. Tier 2 are things that maybe can wait a little bit longer, but we want to keep on our radar. As you can see, if you scroll through this, as of draft 1, we are over what we spent last year. The budget as of right now is $416,757. Last year we spent about $376,900. And we're still doing some trimming. We're still doing, making sure we have the best prices on here. But I wanted to show that to you. We typically approve this in April, so you'll see it again next month. Each of the managers in this area and I will go through kind of what they have on here, bring it to you one more time in March, and then for approval in April. But any initial questions you have on anything on the list, I know some of them can be school type codes or wordings. The ones under building and facilities, those are our Johnson Control things, which tie into our technology and HVACs. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. But any questions on those three areas or feedback?
We don't have the replacing the gym floor on here.
We're set to have a meeting on that tomorrow.
Okay.
But we're gonna have to postpone as one staff member's out sick. Okay. We can use LTFM dollars for that out of this, not out of this budget. Okay. But if you remember back to last June, we can only put so much at a time into LTFM. So I want to see what it costs versus what we have in LTFM before we make that decision. Okay. So we're set to get some quotes on that quickly, so we can decide if we have to wait one more year or if we're able to do it next year. But that gym floor, which we're talking about in the high school by the cafeteria, it was at end of life when we built the new gym, and they had nearing end of life at that time. They had said about 5 more years. Well, we're at about that 5 more year mark, where we're gonna need to replace it soon. If, like I said, if not this year, then probably next year. So, but I should have update on numbers for that next month.
Okay.
With devices, how often are devices replaced?
Jessica, you want to answer that one?
When I came on, it's 7 years.
Oh, wow.
To be honest, I think that's really inappropriate. It's unsafe for risk and security, so I actually did recommend a change up, and we agreed on 4.
4.
But right now I'm playing catch up, so we might still have, we have some that are older than most of the students in the, it makes me uncomfortable, so, yeah.
So we're gonna gradually change that.
Which would be good, I think typically it's.
And technology's
3 to
changing
4
so
years.
fast.
Yes, 3 to 4.
Yeah.
And that's where warranties are too, and I would prefer them that way from a staff standpoint, so we're not in the middle of instruction and your computer shuts down because the battery burned out.
The type 3 vehicles?
Yep.
What are being
So
What is that?
we are potentially looking at 2 more type 3 vehicles, so we have such special ed needs right now that every single one of our vans, Suburbans, we have Tahoe, we have a Transit, they're all going every single day and full. So much so that if staff members have things during the day, or even some of our smaller activities like robotics or speech, we don't have a vehicle.
What vehicle's being looked at though?
We're looking at vans right now to start with again.
Could we get away with 1 this year and 1 next year?
That's something Bruce and I are looking at, is possibly, if we need to make some cost changes, could we get by with 1? I say that, then we get a couple more kids where we have to transport, so that's why it still has 2 on there right now, because we are kind of tied with how many vehicles we have available for any other need besides transportation.
What are the requirements for a type 3? Like what kind of vehicle do they have to be? Is there?
We just try to, they can be any vehicle, they have to pass DOT inspection, there isn't a year requirement.
Don't they have to have limited space, or, you can't go 13 passenger, I don't think.
No, we can have 10 or less. Typically, in the past, we've gotten Suburbans or Tahoes because of 4-wheel drive. The last time we got vans, just for some economy and price, which seem to be going well. If winter's bad, we just don't go. Hard to do when it's part of your routes, because we have to go if we go, but some of those trips, if weather was really bad, we just wouldn't go.
Well, we haven't had snow this year.
And we haven't had snow this year, so.
Well, with school buses, we only go down plowed roads, so we would
Correct.
have,
We do,
Yeah,
4-wheel drive
right.
isn't.
yeah. So that's what we're starting at, is looking at minivans again. That way it will help us be able to get 2 for that price.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions regarding the capital budget? All right, then we are going to move on to policy reapproval.
Policy 708 and 709 we've had before. I just took, and I know it says the drafts up MSBA, I just took MSBA's policies because they updated these, but we've had these 2 policies for a long time. And the last one is the public participation at the board meetings. The change we'd like to add when we do an open forum is that when people talk at open forum, they couldn't make complaints about school personnel, students, or other persons at the public sessions. So that would be why that's on there for that change.
Does anybody have any questions regarding these 3 policies? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve policy 708, transportation of non-public school students, policy 709, student transportation safety policy, and policy 206, public participation at board meetings.
Tony, I'm sorry, but can I ask a question first?
Yeah.
Okay, on policy 709, if a driver does a violation, it's 10 days. That seems excessive for me. Is that policy?
That was MSBA's policy, yep.
Okay, so a person can get a DWI in their personal vehicle, and then 10 days before they legally have to notify the school?
We could certainly change that and make that shorter window if.
I don't know, it just seems excessive.
Yeah.
We have never had a problem, but.
No, anytime we've not had it happen since I've been superintendent, but as far as I know, those get reported right away.
Okay.
Is there a law? Is that what MSBA has it on?
I think it's within those 10 days, yeah.
Okay. Now I'm looking for a motion then to approve these 3 policies.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Did Toby vote?
Toby, were you able to hear that? Were you able to vote on those policies?
Yeah, was it just reapproval of the policies that's in the agenda?
Correct.
Yeah, I approve that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is board goals.
First link is just what the school board had set as goals, so I just wanted to have that fresh. It's in the board agenda every month, but this is what the school board had set. And then admin team and I kind of went through some progress updates on things that we feel have been put in place to kind of address these goals. I think, you know, and I won't read every single one of these boxes to you. I'll certainly take feedback. From my part, you know, I think for staff, things I keep hearing is that there are a lot of pressures and things put on the staff. So we want to continue to help work within that as best we can. Some of these are mandates and laws and things like that, but how can we continue to work at improving staff climate, morale? You know, certainly there are stresses in every single one of the jobs in the district, but we want to work within the means the best we can to keep working on that so staff enjoy coming to work. Maybe not every single minute, but overall it should be hopefully a healthy experience for our staff. And then, you know, as we continue to go through our MTSS process, you know, you heard Ms. Hinckley talk a little bit about how that's going to bleed into the junior high levels, keeping those focuses in front of not only the admin team, but the entire staff of making sure we're looking at our testing scores and our growth and how we can continue to address the academics. We can't fix it all overnight, but I think you heard from both principals, we are making good strides. So to continue to have that at the forefront of how we're making decisions, how we're making purchases, how we're hiring staff. So we continue to make those great growth things that both principals talked about. And then continue to work on our fiscal responsibility. I'm glad that we have a healthy fund balance. As you know, in my two experiences, we've had some things that were unpredicted both years. And by being able to have a good, healthy fund balance, we've been able to overstep those and not be in a situation as you hear some other school districts might be in. So want to continue to do that. Our ESSER monies will expire at the end of this school year. So as we build next year's budget, to be aware of that, we had for this year about $300,000 left that could be applied for this school year. So as we keep building forward, being able to maintain some of the programming and things we put in place during the COVID years with that money, so we can keep having staff in programming in front of our students. Typically this will lead in the next 2 months. Last year we approved this in April. I would anticipate a similar timeline for goals for next year. Is there any feedback any board members have, not only on these goals, but as things you want me or the admin team to look at as we look to set school board goals for next year in the upcoming months?
So it's not a question, but when I looked at the progress, can I ask about the progress?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So with the progress updates, since I'm not real familiar with the letters training, and that's supposed to help out with dyslexia. So can you just share with me a little bit about the letters training and how that does work with some of those issues?
Well, I can try. I'm gonna say no. So it really talks through the science of reading. And when I went through 1 through 4, 5 years ago, it helps understand how the human brain isn't set up just to automatically wired to learn how to read. It's about a scope and sequence of how you develop your open syllables, closed syllables, your vowel teams, and it really helps with the spelling component, but it helps with that whole like understanding of orthographic mapping, like the trajectory of kids actually learning and memorizing some of that. It doesn't happen until those waves, those links are made through that orthographic mapping. Right now in volume 2, it talks about the importance of vocabulary. And Amplify does a nice job. It identifies tier 1, 2, and 3 vocabulary in their books. And before taking this volume of it, we didn't really understand what those were, to which ones we really intensely teach versus the ones we just kind of skim over and say, these are important for this context, but it's not a word you really need to understand. those tier 2 ones where they have multiple meetings. It's a very, very quick overview. I would say more the science of reading, the phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, all that happens in 1 through 4, which really helps us understand how kids learn how to read. I think if you talk to some of the teachers when you're in tomorrow who have gone 1 through 4, and they'll just say, I wish we knew this when we started teaching. I think Minnesota colleges are looking at this being a course that is going to be required while in school, preparatory school, so we don't run into this problem, which is why Minnesota has passed that READ Act of this is important to get in front of teachers.
Thanks.
That was a really terrible quick overview.
Great job, Bonnie.
Alright, does anybody else have any more questions regarding the board goals? Any other questions then regarding the new 3 policies that were just the first readings?
This was the other part that teaching learning will talk a lot about in admin. If you click through them, there's a couple of them we need to go insert our local policies for some of these standards, things like that. That is a task I and the admin team have, but this is just pulling these policies for now directly from MSBA. By the time you see them next month, we will have our updated how our processes work at Hinckley-Finlayson.
Alright, any questions?
Unfortunately, I sound like I have been having a lot of them. But in this was talking about post-secondary planning, transitioning out of high school, that sort of thing. Have you ever had anybody come in from the state, from DEED, to show the labor market information, the growth, the trends, all of that?
Yep, we have in the high school, I can't speak for the elementary, in the high school, we've had that in the past. Where DEED comes in and will help work with the families, things like that. Yep, we've had that quite a bit, that partnership. Katie Hartle used to be a big role with that in her previous job.
Yeah,
and,
she was with rehab.
And her counter or her I don't know what the right word is, person who replaced her isn't in as often as Katie Hartle is, at least while I was principal, I didn't see it as much, so I don't know if that's changed in the last 2 years, but we have had a good partnership with DEED in the past.
Because you could actually even go in, regionally, there are DEED, the analysts that really can go through and really explain some of the growth, the trends. Luke Granger was the one for this area, and he was phenomenal at really digging in and explaining for people to understand that. I don't know how well, Voc Rehab might explain some of that, but one of the analysts, he was actually somebody that was interesting to listen to. Some analytical people can be hard.
Is that something we could open up to families through community ed?
Possibly.
Or is it just done through schools? So I think especially at the lower levels, it's important to get our families on board of why education is so important.
So I attended several of Luke's trainings because I work with dislocated workers. I wouldn't be surprised if he would be open to coming out to schools. It would probably take an email request because he was great to talk with. And that's also something, when we talked earlier about the computer science and the AI, he would be somebody that would be really good to explain through some of that and how industries are changing.
Could you share his contact information with us?
Yeah, I'll have to dig that up.
or tell him where to,
Yeah,
I'll
try. Luke Granger. He was pretty interesting.
Thank you. Alright, we're gonna rewind and go back to new business. We forgot it.
We got meeting confirmed.
Yeah.
Okay. Back up to letter B under new business. Mr. Richter, myself, and this time Mr. Lick from the elementary school, we discussed some non-contractual issues. First one was, and we had talked about this at the end of teacher negotiations, just looking away, could we run our weight room program a little bit different? So what we discussed is sitting down with the head coaches, Mandy Hartle, and possibly out of community ed, especially for the summer programming part. So I met with Pam Riggle today a little bit to kind of keep that process going. But you know what Mr. Richter and I kind of left with is we're going to set up a meeting with the head coaches, Mandy and Pam Riggle, and myself to kind of look at should we run that out of community ed, do something a little bit different, just to help with the kids, maybe pay a little fee to help issue some stipends for the staff members who are doing that, and maybe the head coaches would give some money out of their programming to help offset that. We also discussed, as we're in budgeting season, a lot of our fine arts programs, well, all of our sports programs, but our fine arts programs kind of have a separate budget where they submit through Miss Hinckley and Mandy. You know, let's bring up our plays, for example, where she'll budget for not only props, outfits, things like that, but also maybe some construction costs, things like that. That's kind of our mechanism to help fund those other things. So just talking about there may be some requests that come up or ways to help out of that materials budget, kind of fund some of those other things. Then typically what happens after that is they're submitted, they go to Miss Hinckley, Mandy Hartle, and those conversations kind of go what can be done, what can be afforded, things like that. So we just kind of short up that process a little bit. Our transition program, which is in the high school, our 18 to 21-year-old special education program, we talked through that. We've been talking through the transition program on and off throughout the year, just making sure that there's enough support for the needs of the program and the staff, and making sure staff are getting their prep time. Excuse me. Middle of January, I know Ms. Hinckley and the SCRED leaders met with the staff in the transition program and kind of rebuilt the schedule. I believe there's a check-in on kind of how that's gone, as now we're 2 or 3 weeks out from that, but just making sure that the teachers are getting their needs, and then also the students. I think a topic that's probably come up quite a bit, that for sure both years I've been superintendent, but I know we've been talking about it, just continuing to look at ways to get maybe more support to help with some of the behaviors in the high school. Last year, the board did add a behavior interventionist, just looking at some possibilities of maybe moving into a full-time dean. Right now our dean is half-time dean, half-time activities director. And another idea was another administrator in the district as well, or at the high school as well, just to help with some of those needs as we go into staffing and prioritizing staff for the high school level. This number 5 was just when you're working especially with younger children or sometimes special ed children, but it could happen in any classroom, just ways we can continue to provide staff training to help prevent those really bad situations that don't happen a lot, but when they do, they can be very emotional, very alarming, things that you just don't deal with every day. So are there other ways to kind of help work through that training to get more staff involved? We do train staff who work with students who have these needs, but the needs are kind of growing and sometimes moving into other classrooms where we don't train them. How can we keep some of that training in front of staff so when they get in those once in every couple of year experience or once a year, whatever it is, how can we get them more support so they know how to get themselves safely out of those situations and get the students safely out of those situations? So my thought is to work with SCRED, and we had some ideas, maybe even, not every staff can go through the full formal training, but maybe sharing some ideas at staff meetings in a general sense, just to kind of keep that in front of staff. So, when this happens, it's not, oh, what do I do? We talked a lot about.
Can I just say one thing, and not just at before school starts or during the summer, but maybe, quarterly, where we have new employees that would need that training or those tools for them.
And it would be teachers and support staff. I mean, I know this is teacher we're talking about, but I would argue that'd be for our support staff too.
Yeah.
We discussed letters, and you've heard a little bit about that. There's a lot going on with letters for our staff who are doing that, and some things we may need to look at as we go further down the road here. We have some staff members who are already at the end of credits on our steps and lanes schedule. So how can we work around that? Some teachers choose to, once the training is complete, pay for the college credit, and then we can give them steps and lanes. Just how we're gonna work around that going forward as more staff get to that MA plus 30 lane. And then last part, which is the part that had my spelling error, we just talked about procedures for Fast Bridge, when there are things that go wrong, just kind of what is the wheel of support that teachers have when things go maybe not as well as planned. Is it our curriculum director, is it our principal, is it technology director, all those people have some rules and testing, just kind of what that looks like for support, because it never goes as perfectly as we hope, especially the more kids who are taking tests at the same time. We might run into some tech issues. I don't know, Mr. Richter, if I hit everything, I spoke for Brian, or Mr. Masterson, but certainly if you want to add anything from your end.
It's always good to, even as often as we talk, it's good to have a chance to, hammer out some of these topics and hopefully make progress, so.
I'll speak for Brian again, on behalf of myself. It was very positive. Yep, we're talking through some tough things, but both Mr. Richter and Mr. Lick were very positive, willing to hear both sides out. And, maybe we don't always have the same agreement at the end, but it is always a certainly very civil and productive conversation every time whether it's meeting with just Mr. Richter or a combination of members from HFEA. I feel like we hear both sides and have good, healthy conversation.
Does anybody have any questions regarding new business, Jaguar Pride, or meet and confer? Thank you. Now I believe we are down at the amended budget for 2024-25.
We'll go to the first link, the amended 23-24 budget, just to kind of show where we're at. Because of our enrollment, our projected revenue, like I had said earlier in the meetings, right now set to be about 909 students, which is less than we had planned. We had planned for about 970. So what that revenue projection, it drops our revenue about 521,324 from what was predicted when I submitted the budget to you last June. What was good is what I predicted to you last June as far as our fund balance. Our fund balance had gone up a little bit, which we had just heard about when we did our audit in January. I had predicted that our fund balance would be about 25 points. I can't remember what I predicted, but it had gone up a couple percent, so that helped offset some of the costs by having a little bit healthier fund balance than we had predicted. So this proposed budget, I was able to use our actual balance from July 1st to 23, and you can see our where each source of funding is and where our revenues and expenditures are predicted to be. And you'll notice under the general, we have two different fund balances. We have unassigned and reserved. That blue number and the number below it add up to our total fund balances. The blue number is the number we can spend on anything. Those reserved are typically special education dollars or long-term facility type projects. So the blue number, that 3,771,179 is kind of where our fund balance is predicted to be. After that, you can see food service and community ed service. That's changed a little bit from what I had told you in June, but we had predicted in June last year that those would possibly be running into a negative. Updating where those numbers are as of now, that is indeed still kind of holding true. The community service one, which the board had just corrected at audit time, was because this last school year had started with a negative fund balance. So that's why that one's a little bit worse. The food service is doing better at this point than last year, but obviously you can still see we're predicted to run into a deficit in those areas. So what you do, what I do is I take the unassigned fund balance, we don't want to end the year with food service and community service being in a negative. So we would pay those back to zero out of our fund balance. And long story kind of short, what that would predict us to be with our current projected revenue and expenditures is at about a 23.6% predicted fund balance. So we're about $217,000 behind what we would hope. Now, I did learn some good news on Friday. There may be some more special education revenue from the state that I have not included in our revenues. The reason I did not include them is special ed can be so unpredictable with kids just being enrolled and then not enrolled. We have such a high turnover of special ed enrollment, and then the expenses are very unpredictable, meaning a student could come into our district tomorrow and need some paraprofessional support, things like that, that would kind of possibly eat into that cost. So I didn't put it in, just hoping to have some cushion for some special ed costs. But if all things run as it's currently planned, we would be much closer to that 25% fund balance. But I don't want to put all that into revenue because we're going to have some special ed expenses. Odds are that we're not thinking of right now for the rest of the school year. Questions on that? I've talked a lot before I go into the second part of this.
Does anybody have any questions?
So Brian, with that projected budget, it does not contain the special ed revenue or special ed expenses, is that right?
It has the expenses in there. It doesn't have all the revenue in there.
Okay.
It has, I have 2 million in there, and we're predicted possibly to have another couple 100,000 possibly. So if that comes out to be true, we could come in right at 25%. I just don't want to put that in completely yet because I don't know what all those sped costs are going to be.
Okay. And when do we find out what those revenues will be?
I continue to look at them every month. We are just confirming, by we, I mean, I work with Ellers, our financial institute, on this to help me. We are double checking to make sure that our special ed enrollment's the same as what the state's reporting. So it's there, we just want to make sure everything is correct.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll go into the revenue part. If you want me to go through each one of those tabs, I certainly can. You can see the general fund summary and then other funds are the two big one. Food service, I did have to adjust a little bit. Back in June, we had predicted about 680,000. You can see food service now is at about 619. The reason that went down is less students are eating, especially lunches. So one of the things Sarah and I have talked about is trying to find the top 10, 15 menu items that are the most popular and kind of keep rotating those. Maybe once in a while we put in something off that because I understand we don't want to get too monotonous or have the same thing all the time, but also we want to make sure we're feeding kids that are eating and giving them what they like. So that was the big one that changed on the other funds summary. If you'd like me to go through all the budget codes, I can certainly try to do that. Those are mostly set up for Joanne, so she knows how to code those into Skyward, which is our funding source. But what I really wanted to hit is again, why our expenditures changed. If you remember last June, we had added at the very end some positions, and those are included in there, which I believe all buildings are very happy about. We put in the behavior interventionist, first grade teacher, a second teacher at Empower, and added some 6 classes. Teacher negotiations were a little higher than predicted, and then we did hire, which is a good thing, more veteran staff. But when you hire more veteran staff, of course that comes with some higher costs. So, and then this year, why our expenditures also went up, we've had more special ed costs than we were anticipating with a lot of move-ins. You may see that elementary is always looking for some paraprofessionals. We just have that many special ed needs that have come in that we weren't planning for. So questions on expenses, revenue, Otherwise, I'd be recommending to approve the amended budget with a potential fund balance at the end of this year being 23.6.
The only thing I would add is, just in the food service area is, remember our milk prices went up by, I think, just right around $30,000 for milk alone. Because we didn't go with the previous vendor that had been
And I
not
don't
great to
know,
work with.
and I have not taken a single complaint on milk this year, where last year it was near daily. So yes, it costs more, but I have not had one milk complaint all school year. So that's a good thing. Yes, it costs a little more, but that is a good thing. Kids are drinking the milk and it's not rotten, sour, or chunky.
Does anybody have any questions? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to accept the amended budget.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, I'll just say this, our policy is to strive to be as close as possible, 25%. I think we're off by a couple $100,000 plus to reach that policy figure amount. And living in this inflationary environment, I don't know that we have a lot of contingency where we're at with this particular budget. I guess I'd like to see it at or above 25% to have some degree of contingency than to vote in a budget that's already below it in this inflationary environment. And we don't even know that the revenue coming in for special ed is gonna be what we want or what we need to hit 25%. So with those uncertainties, I guess I would like to see some cuts to this budget so we hit 25%. And then if we get that revenue coming in from special ed, then we can make some additions, but I feel like we should follow our policy and hit 25% or better.
Toby, can I clarify, you are thinking there should be cuts right now, or are you thinking as we go into next year's budget?
How is our policy worded, Brian?
Our policy says that the board would mandate cuts at 15%.
This is 23-24 budget.
Yeah, this is our current budget that we're living on right now.
Okay.
I do have a follow-up question for the board after you guys take the vote on this for next year. But the budget I'm proposing is the one we're living on right now. And I don't think it would be wise to make cuts right now as we are looking at every areas where we can not spend money. But if we make cuts, that's just gonna add stress right now to an already pretty stressed out staff. And I wouldn't be recommending that at this point since we're not at 15%.
There might be additional.
So this is where you're looking at projected 23.6% as we round out 23-24 school year, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that's, okay. And when do we look at the 24-25 budget? Is that in July?
Nope, you'll do that in June. I'm really hopeful maybe even in May, but I'm also, my hands are tied at the state legislation level. You'll for sure do it in June at the latest.
Okay. Well, and you don't feel there's anything in our budget that we can cut out, that we've already cut out all the fat?
We are continuing to look at food service. Sarah and I are meeting again tomorrow to talk about some things. We are continuing not to make any unnecessary purchases. So we have done that, but we will continue to look as an admin team, but right now nothing is outside of what we're gonna do with meals for food service. Nothing that comes to mind right now sitting here.
Do you feel like if we vote in this budget, it's gonna make our 24-25 budget, gonna put that in a more difficult position, get that at 25% or higher?
I don't think you approving this part makes it more difficult. The part that's gonna make it difficult for next year is that, like I said earlier in the agenda, we are not gonna have any remaining COVID ESSER funds. which for this year, we had about 300,000. So if like I said, we're about 217 behind right now, add 300,000 to that. So that's the part that's gonna make next year's more difficult. Last spring, the state had already put out projected district runs, they call them, which is new state dollars. At that time, we were looking at about $1 million of new money for this upcoming school year. We are not gonna get $1 million because our enrollment's not that high. So I still need to do some research in that, plus legislation just started meeting today. That could change, but we are predicted to have some new state dollars next year, which will hopefully offset a good portion of this. The part that doesn't fully offset is raises inflation, kind of like Toby said a few minutes ago.
When do you work with Ellers to put in the total special ed revenue?
We said we'd check in again in a couple weeks just to make sure enrollment's there. So probably by the end of this month.
All right, so we are, I'm looking for, we have a motion.
Did Janelle have a
Oh,
question?
Janelle, do you have a question? I'm sorry.
So your discussion about the special ed funds, how confident do you feel that those might come through?
I'm confident they're there. I am not totally confident to put them in as revenue because I know of a situation now where we're transporting a student to a school in Cambridge. You know, those expenses, I just know there's gonna be expenses that aren't fully in the budget yet, so I wanted to make sure that we accommodate for all those expenses that are there too. So I'm pretty confident it's there. I just want to make sure that we don't have some more expenses that I'm not as confident in. And including possibly new enrollments that come in and need different transportation, different paras, you know, different staffing, things like that.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion passes 6-1.
Can I ask a question on that, which just for a little further discussion now that it's passed? As I look to submit a budget to you in June, just so, you know, admin or myself has some direction, would you like to see the budget for 24-25 come in with a fund balance of 25% higher? Would you like us to have a little bit of time to work through that? I just want to kind of know, are you hoping to fix that all before the next budget? Work through that, see what our enrollment ends up to be. Just what would you, just some parameters I guess I'm looking for from the board as we work on developing our next budget.
Can I ask, so we haven't.
I would definitely like to see it built at above 25%, and maybe if we could wait as long as possible to see what our, maybe the longer we wait, the better student numbers we have, but I understand we're doing it in June, so we won't know a whole lot until the year starts.
Yeah.
But my other concern too is, what if that number, student body number continues to deteriorate?
Yep, that's
one of my concerns.
That's a good question. I plan to budget for less students. I've experienced it now. We don't want to do that. The hard part is if we underpredict too far, it's hard to add staff back in August, but at the same point, it's hard right now to sit here and not have some flexibility either. So I do plan to under budget our enrollment. We have to approve a budget before the end of June, so I understand it'd be nice to wait and see what it's like in August, but we do have to, the board has to approve a budget by the end of June. So that's why we do it then. Heather, did you have a question?
I was just wondering, because we haven't, like, we're still in discussions with like transportation, or we're not quite sure what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That could affect the budget, correct?
Yep.
So we probably need some time to still see if things will change.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
How many years have we received COVID funds? Is this the 4th school year?
Starting with the 2021 school year, so yeah, 2021. 21, 22, 22, yes, for school year.
So I guess I would like to hear from you and admin, after receiving so many funds over the last 4 school years, how do you cut that out in 1 year? How do you, I mean, that's huge for our little school district.
I think one of the challenges I see is we have so many kids who are still struggling from the pandemic, whether it be mental health, whether it be these pockets of learning or academics that they've been missing. I think the supports that we've built in have been there to support them, and I do feel like cutting them out overnight would be extremely challenging. I guess that's my 2 cents. We didn't add things just to add, we added them because of the student need and the deficits that we were seeing coming in from the pandemic.
I don't think that it's fair to Brian to demand that you have it, the 25%. I think there's gotta be a little leeway, and I trust his judgment.
And I will clarify, I will certainly strive for that, because that's what our policy is, and I will certainly communicate with you all as we go through that. I just want to know, is that a hard get there? I mean, 'cause I'll get there, if I gotta get there, we'll get there. But kinda like Bonnie said, just, I'm worried if we look at some of those COVID positions or things, or things that we added at the end of last budget cycle, we put them there for student need. And to cut them all would be very tough on our district and our students.
We lose a lot of progress, I think.
Well, that's what the reserve's for. It's nice to be there, but things that come up, that's what the reserve's for.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
So you've been on the board for a while. How often is the
Brian,
school
can I
at
ask for one other thought?
25%?
Just a second, Toby, Janelle's asking a question.
How often are we at that 25%?
How often are we going?
At that 25% for the reserve?
Oh, sometimes it's 25, sometimes it's been more.
Okay.
I don't know if we've ever been under.
I don't think we've ever come in under at a
I know of.
proposed June budget, and I don't know about during the school year, like this kind of situation, if we've dropped under 25. Every year that I've been here, now going on into my 14th, we've set the budget to be at 25% fund balance or higher. I can't speak historically beyond that, but every year I've been here, that budget has come in at right around that 25%. And most of the time we hit it.
And obviously it ebbs and flows during the year because of the needs.
Yep. Toby, did you want to add one more part?
Yeah, just kind of looking at it from a standpoint of like looking more towards the future and stemming the attrition of our students to other school districts. Is there any way we could be proactive and maybe send out some kind of think of our students as customers, like some kind of a customer satisfaction survey? What things do our students and parents like about our school district? What things can we do better for student life and for our parents? And also, another question I would like to ask on some kind of a customer satisfaction survey is, do you like having early release on Wednesdays? Or would you prefer to have full day of school Monday through Friday? I think we need to dig deep into what do our students want, what do our parents want. I know a lot of students will say they like getting out early, but I'd like that question to be asked more towards the parents, because they're the ones that shift students around to different school districts.
Okay.
That's my city and more, they have full day every day, Monday through Friday. We need to get to the heart of the problem. What's causing this attrition? And we need to stem it and build our numbers higher.
Okay, thank you.
If surveys are sent out, how often do you hear back? I mean, we had good feedback for the survey with the daycare.
The daycare one was amazing. The last 2 times I mailed surveys to for enrollment purposes, I mailed just because, that's what I chose to do. I didn't want to send a mass survey when it's only a pocket of people that we're trying to figure out why did you leave. both last year was specifically about Finlayson. This year I sent it to every resident family who went to a different school. I only heard back from like 4. So that's the hard part. Daycare was great. We got about 85 responses. That was wonderful. I don't, I can this kind of survey, yes, I could certainly send. But especially when we're doing mailings, and I sent back, envelopes with postage on it and everything, and I still only got 4 back. So it's hard to get some of that feedback. But I can certainly work on that.
What if there was some way to do some
Can I
feedback
see one of
during
the, one of the
conferences?
Yes, as soon as Janelle's done.
What if there was a way to do feedback during conferences? I know some attendance is better than others.
That's a
We
good
can
idea.
definitely do that. Our teachers already survey their kids.
Yeah.
There maybe isn't, the specific questions on there. What do you like about our school? More about like how they feel in class, how you feel safe, do you feel respected, those type of things. Probably easier at the elementary level to have a teacher sit down with a parent. We get pretty high percentages of attendance at our conferences. It's something worth, it's a short turnaround, but
Well, not this one, maybe the end of the year.
this will be our last conference in February here, so, if we can work quickly, and I think if nothing else, it adds another talking point for our teachers with parents. Always looking for ways to problem solve and troubleshoot situations that come up. We know there will be some squeaky wheels, right? And we need to hear those. And we need to prioritize where we put our efforts into what is the best for the whole, but one voice is, if we can hear it, it's great moving forward. I'd want it to be consistent across buildings, I think.
Toby, did you want to add one more part?
Yes, just one other thing. I think when polling our customers in a survey, I think it might be more efficient and cost effective if we could somehow get their email addresses. If parents would be willing to volunteer an email address somehow and, permission to use their email to solicit their feedback instead of sending out, pre-postage paid envelopes and getting paper in the mail. Maybe that tends to more so go in the garbage, whereas if they get something via email, people like to look at their devices, and maybe they'd be happy to do a survey because they're looking at a device and it's cost effective because we're not paying postage. And then it's the speed of light, if you send, we get it right away. So I think we might get more response maybe if we can somehow figure out a way to do it via email.
Okay.
All right, we're going to move on. Next up is the resolution to accept donated funds.
Approving this resolution, we had an anonymous donor who would like to give money towards our robotics program in the amount of $1,500. And the terms of the donation was that the robotics advisors could choose where that $1,500 would go to. So recommend approval of this resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Next up is setting a work session.
So I'd like to set a work session, and I've learned since I made the board agenda that February 21st will not work. I'd like to set a work session before our March board meeting, and I'd like to set it to go over our third-party transportation bids that we did this past fall, because I'd like to make a decision as a school district and also be able to let these companies know kind of what our answer is. So I'm wondering, there's a couple things. I'm wondering, hopefully, if we can get all 7 of you together before at least March 11th, or another option could be that I could bring the bids back to the commodities team, talk about it there, and then we could talk about it as a full board on March 11th. But my hope was to kind of let you all be able to see it at the same time, hear it at the same time. I'd invite both companies to that work session, and I'd invite our bus drivers as well and transportation department is my hope. But I don't know what calendars look like from now to the next few weeks. I know there's a lot, some of us are parents and have kids in sports, so I wanna be respectful of that too, but almost any night other than, works for me personally, so I don't know if there's nights that would work. February 22nd, would that work? I think
Is there a home game?
There's a
that we could
boys
do it
game.
There's
earlier?
a boys game.
There's a boys home game that
Does
night.
it
We
have to
could,
be at 6:30? Could we do it?
we could go earlier if it works for you all. We've gone as early as 4 o'clock before,
On which day?
the 22nd of February.
But that won't work, if you want bus drivers to come, that won't work for them.
That would,
Would not work for them.
not 4 o'clock, right?
Probably like 5 o'clock at the earliest.
Five.
At the earliest.
Yeah. The 22nd does work for me.
Pick a day, I'm good every day.
Except donkey basketball day.
Well, yeah.
Toby, do you know your schedule for the next few weeks?
Yeah, so the 21st probably would be a low percentage of me to be able to attend. The 19th would be the best for this coming week. And same with the 26th. And that's as far as my schedule goes, but.
The 19th, we can't have meetings because it's President's Day.
Okay.
What does your schedule look like on the 22nd?
Yeah, I'm scheduled to possibly be at work that day. And it's a high probability that I will get a call in to be at work that day, but there's an outside chance that I would not get a call, but it's I'd say 75% chance I won't be available that day.
Okay. Did you say the 26th would work?
That's probably a 75% chance that I would be able to make it on the 26th, the higher probability.
That's one date that we already had out there that,
Yeah, 26th,
I can do virtual.
could do it virtually. You couldn't, you're gone, right, Leo? That's
Yes,
right.
I'd
Yeah,
like to be gone.
26 won't work. Leo, what are you gone? What dates are you gone?
I could make the 22nd work and then leave on the 23rd. That's a Thursday, 22nd, right?
Correct.
I would make that work if it does for everybody else.
if we did it like 5.
Or I don't know if we're gonna be able to find a common date for all 7, should I?
If it's a probability that all 7
Or
of
is it
us.
something that we could do prior to the school board meeting in March? Or that's something that's undesirable?
We could, it doesn't give a lot of time if you all have questions for me to go do research or ask the companies to clarify things, doesn't give a lot of time to we certainly could get all the information that day and make a decision. I guess my thought was in case there are other questions to research or find out, I'd like a little bit of time to do that before I make any recommendation.
Is he able to do it virtually for the 22nd?
Toby, would you be able to do possibly virtually on the 22nd?
That would be unknown depending on my work assignment, if I would get one.
Do we know that the other 6 of us could make that day work?
I can.
Jody?
I'm open.
Because, if there's a probability that Toby can't,
Otherwise, if you could somehow record it, and then if I cannot make it, I could
Yep.
just
They're definitely recorded. Would you be comfortable with that? If that works for the other 6?
Yeah, I would be okay with that, and then if I have questions, I can just ask them.
Yep, then February 22nd.
What time?
There is a home boys basketball game that night. I think the earliest for the bus drivers will be there would be 5 p.m. So 5 or 5:30?
5:30 maybe.
5:30? 5:30 on February 22nd? Okay, then I'm making a recommendation to do a work session on February 22nd at 5:30 p.m.
We're at,
Hinckley.
okay.
Alright, so I'm looking for a motion to, hold a board work session on February 22nd, 5:30 in the Hinckley boardroom.
I'll make the motion.
I'll say.
I'm having some typing problems.
Do we need a second?
There's a second, there's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Now up is adjourn. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
I'll make a motion.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All